Let's talk about the hidden cost of, well, hiding. The price we pay for not being our true, authentic selves. And it's a cost that goes way beyond just feeling a little off. It can actually impact our minds, and believe it or not, our bodies in some pretty surprising ways.
So let me ask you this. Ever feel like you're wearing a mask? You know that feeling like you're putting on a performance, even when you're just going about your day? If you've been feeling a bit, fake or just disconnected lately, trust me, you are not the only one.
You know, psychologists actually have a name for this mask. They call it the false self. It's basically the version of you that you've learned to show the world, to fit in, to get that job, or sometimes just to make it through the day without any drama. And here's the wild part. Research suggests that for most of us adults, this isn't the exception, it's the rule. We get so used to this little performance, we end up being inauthentic without even realizing we're doing it.
So where in the world does this habit of hiding even come from? I mean, we're definitely not born this way. To really get it, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
This right here, this really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you've got kids. They are just pure, unfiltered emotion. They're brutally honest. If they're happy, they're laughing their heads off. If they're sad, the whole world knows it. But then there's us, the adults, so much more controlled. We learn to trade in all that raw authenticity for something that feels safer, compliance.
And look, this trade-off, it doesn't just happen by accident. It's something we learn. Maybe you remember being a kid and getting punished for telling a truth that an adult just didn't want to hear. Or maybe you just watched the grown-ups around you, saw them using little white lies to keep things smooth. The point is, we slowly learn, often without even realizing it, that being ourselves can feel kinda dangerous. So hiding, that becomes a survival strategy.
And then we become adults and this whole hiding thing gets a fancy official name, especially at work. It's called emotional labor. This is all that invisible effort it takes to act cheerful for a customer when you're having an awful day. Or, forcing a laugh at your boss's not-so-funny joke. It is absolutely exhausting because you're constantly trying to manage that gap between what you really feel and what you're showing on the outside.
Okay, so we get it. Hiding our feelings is mentally draining. No brainer. But what if I told you it has a real, measurable, physical cost? Let's dive into how our bodies are secretly keeping score of all this. We all kind of operate on this one big assumption, don't we? If I can just push this feeling down, if I don't let it show on my face, then it'll just poof, it'll disappear. Out of sight, out of mind. Simple enough, right?
Yeah, nope, not even close. In fact, the science shows that the exact opposite is true. Suppressing your emotions doesn't make them vanish. It just forces them to pop up somewhere else, usually in your body.
And we have the receipts to prove it. This research from the Berkeley Psychophysiology Lab is just fascinating. So they had people watch a pretty disgusting film and told them, whatever you do, don't show any emotion on your face. And what happened? Their bodies went haywire. Instantly, they saw this massive spike in nervous system activity. That's your fight or flight response kicking in. They literally started sweating more. Their blood vessels constricted. Their bodies were screaming even though their faces were blank.
Think about it like this. Your body is constantly working overtime, desperately trying to keep a lid on a boiling pot of water. And doing that day after day, year after year, it takes a serious toll. This kind of chronic bottling up is linked to everything from chronic stress and depression all the way to a higher risk of serious physical problems, like cardiovascular disease.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty heavy, but here is the really good news. This is not a life sentence. We learned how to hide, which means we can also learn how to be authentic again. There is a path back to your real self. And that journey back, it starts with a word that I think a lot of us misunderstand: vulnerability. We're taught our whole lives to see it as a weakness, right? But what if it's the exact opposite? What if being vulnerable is actually a courageous act of just being honest, of showing up as you really are, and admitting, hey, I'm struggling a bit today?
So how do you even start? Well, first, just practice noticing. Just start paying attention to that little gap between what you're feeling on the inside and the face you're showing the world. Second, start small, like incredibly small. We're not talking about sharing your deepest, darkest secrets. Just share one tiny real opinion or a little story with someone you actually trust. And that brings us to the third point: set boundaries. You don't owe this to everybody. You get to choose who is trustworthy enough to see the real you.
Because at the end of the day, that's the whole point of this. The goal is to reconnect with your true self. That's the part of you that isn't constantly performing or running social calculations. It's the you that's just you, spontaneous and authentic. And that's the real key to not just surviving, but to feeling truly alive.
So I'll leave you with this one question to mull over. When you really think about it, have you ever felt that physical pressure? That emotional buildup from holding it all in? That tension in your shoulders or that knot in your stomach? Just recognizing it, that's the very first step to finally let